Oh, hey, team! Thank you so much for joining me this Wednesday. It is great to be back with y'all. I know I didn't do a live stream last week. I was in South Carolina visiting my in-laws and specifically my nephew who turned 4 and is super into Transformers now. So we played Transformers. Not that hanging out with you guys isn't lovely, but I do not get to hang out and play Transformers with my nephew very often. So let's see. It's late June here in Oklahoma, but I am in my office because you can't see it, but I've got like 2 fans, and this one over here is like a swamp cooler. So I'm still warm, but I'm not like dying of heat stroke. And you can see this cool blue light. It changes colors, guys. I can do these things, and I'm very much looking forward to using my new beautiful colored light when I'm doing DMing for Guns, Magic, and Steel over on Cheshire Vic's channel on Mondays. XMFers are cool. Gotta step down that voltage. I'm sorry, Deborah. I don't know what you're talking about. I just think the blue light's cool. Anywho, but most importantly, Dapper, for when I'm DMing your game, isn't going to be terrifying when I say roll initiative and then the screen changes to this. I'm really excited about it. And speaking of rolling for initiative, that's not strictly what we're doing tonight. What I thought would be super fun for a just palette cleansing Wednesday live stream, I thought it would be super fun to look at the world of Dungeons and Dragons, the Forgotten Realms, and science it, right? So we're going to look at it and we're going to do like a climate analysis. I think that's fun. I think it's a great way to learn and apply knowledge about the climate when you're just sort of like, well, what would happen if the continents looked like this, and change a bunch of stuff about it. So that's what we're going to do. I found some maps on the internet, and we're just going to start from there. Because Dapper, thank you. Transformer and electrical diagrams. Okay. I am not an electrician. I know you were. Not my field. Anyway. Okay. Nope, this button. Here we go. So, because I am super technologically advanced, this is in fact just Keynote, but that's our map. I'm glad you're down for it, Creationist. I'm excited. I am super excited for tonight. Okay. So this is the Forgotten Realms, the normal like setting for Dungeons and Dragons. I think the world is called Toril. Most of the stuff happens, I think, here. Like the Sword Coast there's a whole Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. That's one of the campaign settings. There's like a source book for that. But let's just talk about what's going on here. The map isn't, no, it's not 3D. It's easier for me to work in 2D, Dapper. That's what I got. of like Toril. Again, on the interwebs. This button. Sorry, I apparently can't hide your comment. So that's cool. That's fun. There we go. Nailed it. I'm such a good YouTuber. I'm so good at this. Okay. So what I wanted to start off with is a few assumptions I'm making, and I don't think these are terrible assumptions. I'm going to assume that this planet is about the same size as Earth. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but it needs to not be like a third the size or half the size, right? It needs to be about the same size as Earth. Well, that's just what I'm assuming, right? That it's close enough. And this is an assumption I have to make because it's spelled out like in the player's handbook. The length of a day on this planet is also 24 hours. So its rotation rate is comparable to Earth's, which is an important thing for climate. And the other thing that we're going to be assuming here is that its year is also 365 days, or close enough, right? Good enough for. So the reason those things are important, right? If the planet was spinning, its global circulation patterns would change. If it was smaller or larger, also those global circulation patterns would change. But if it's comparable to Earth, then there's a few things that we can kind of know, right? So we generally break Earth up into about 3 regions: the tropics, the tropics, the mid-latitudes, and the polar region. So the tropics are going to be, let's draw a line on here. That's going to denote our tropics. I'm going to assume that this blue line here that was already on the map, that's going to be our equator. So that's all well and good. So there's our equator. And so if that's about half, then I want to kind of split the difference here. Nope, that's not what I wanted to do at all. I want to grab this line. There we go. So don't worry, I'll make this line bigger so you guys can actually see it. Format, line, boop, boop, boop. Boop. There we go. So this is going to be about our tropical region, and I'll draw a similar line down here. And, oh, that's interesting. Is that supposed to be ice? We'll have to think about that. Okay. So there's our tropics, and then let's do mid-latitudes in there and down here, about that. So we kind of have these 3 regions. Here's the tropics, which extends 30 degrees north and south-ish. So if the planet has the same size and rotation rate or is close enough, then its regions will extend to about the same latitudes. So, okay. Yeah, so let's just start north and go south here. So up here, I feel bad. I've been like running an Icewind Dale campaign, but I've been kind of homebrewing it substantially. So I forget which one of those. I think this is Icewind Dale up here. And so, yeah, this is like frozen, think Siberia. It might even be more severe than that. So the Dungeons and Dragons world, to have, well, I guess Icewind Dale doesn't quite. So Icewind Dale, right, is canonically cursed for it to be permanently winter. So there are certainly places on planet Earth that now get as cold as Icewind Dale was. They just don't stay that all the time. So far, we can kind of make some assumptions that overall climate is still sticking pretty close to Earth. So here is going to be our, here are our mid-latitudes. So by the way, the most interesting weather is, the most interesting weather that's going to occur in this world is going to be here in the mid-latitudes and then down here in the southern hemisphere mid-latitudes. In the polar regions, you get different types of weather. Actually, the polar regions on Earth are the least understood. They're the hardest to study because the fewest people live there. Okay, and then here's going to be our tropics. The tropics are overall have kind of the most boring weather. But let's not get hung up in that. One of the things I want to look at is what are our surface winds going to look like, global surface winds. So where's the best place to put your ship in the water and sail really fast? So one of the reasons that we can break up the climate into 3 distinct regions, tropics, mid-latitudes, and polar, is because of these like global overturning convective cells. So we have air that gets real warm and rises up at the equator, right? So air all around the equator here is going to get warm and rise, and then some of it's going to travel to the north, some of it's going to travel to the south. And once it hits about 30 degrees, it'll start to sink down, and that's a function where it starts to fall down is actually a function of rotation rate and size, rotation rate and planet size. There we go, nailed it. Yeah, okay, so then, and we'll have winds start to come back to the surface, and if we assume that this planet rotates in the same direction as Earth, then the Coriolis effect is going to be the same. So in the northern hemisphere, winds deflect to their right, and in the southern hemisphere, winds deflect to their left. So we would expect to see, let's draw not that direction. We would expect to see global winds at the surface traveling the opposite direction of the way that arrow is currently facing. So let's flip him around and go like that. Yeah. So we're going to expect to see, also, it should be lime green, I think, or orange. There we go. Orange is a better color. So here at the surface, we're going to expect global winds, surface winds traveling. These are easterly. So these are from the east to the west. And they're going to be all around here. It's okay, Rebecca, we just started. And we're just doing global surface winds for Faerun. Okay. So we're going to get winds that face that direction here. And then, so you actually get diverging surface winds right at the 30-degree point. So we would have doldrums, so a very crappy place to put your boat in the water and try to sail is going to be right around like the 30 degrees north and south mark. And then, so we go up, sorry, I'm thinking through what our winds at 60 degrees are going to be. I think they're the same direction, but I always have to double check this in my head. So I'm going to have in the northern hemisphere winds coming, surface winds coming down from the pole, and it would hit like 60 degrees and it's turning to its right, so it goes that way. Yeah. So we also are going to have these. We'll have those same easterly surface winds. Boop. Going around 60 degrees north and south. So that is kind of nice. So if you want to, those are these are like the trade winds. If you've ever heard of that. So if your Dungeons and Dragons campaign is a ship-based campaign, that's something that's going to be really important. There is something else we would expect, and it's kind of reflected here. I would expect to see desert regions all along around this 30-degree line, and we definitely hit this desert region here. I'm assuming that's what that tan color means. So that's great. That kind of matches expectation. Less deserty stuff going on here near like the Shining Sea, but I think we can probably explain that away. I've got some thoughts. And yeah. And then also, we've got that big desert there. And we're definitely, if we're looking at 30 south, we're going to hit a desert there. So it's not perfect, right? It's not sort of as an exaggerated thing that you see on Earth where like the Sahara Desert is right there. You know, the deserts in the American Southwest, they're all clustered around these like specific latitudes. But, you know, we'll give the nice people at Wizards of the Coast quite a bit of leeway, because I doubt they were thinking about a planet's response to, you know, global atmospheric circulation when they were making their fantasy world, right? Another thing that we're going to see, so oranges are our surface winds here. So let's make kind of an upper level winds. and we'll make those a different color. So let's think about what those are going to be. So the surface winds are predominantly going to affect, let's make upper level winds hot pink, because why not? Surface winds are predominantly going to affect like ships. Upper level winds are often more important for weather patterns. Dabra, I definitely like your answer here. If the climate doesn't make sense, we can just say a wizard did it. Though perhaps there's an angry druid somewhere, or a benevolent druid that's like, no, this region shouldn't be desert anymore. We want lush fields. Something like that. I don't know. Okay. Here we go. Okay, and I actually want to flip that sucker. Okay. So pink is going to be my upper level winds. Upper level winds are overall going to be flowing. This is where we're going to care about them. We're going to have these westerly winds, which I always think sounds kind of like wascally wabbit. And these westerly winds are going to be super important for climate like moderation and modification. Same thing going on here. We're getting those westerly winds. So if you're ever wondering why California tends to have better weather than, say, Pennsylvania, it is because the winds that are sort of moving air masses, that are moving weather systems towards California, are coming from over the ocean. Anything that's going on over the ocean, believe it or not, tends to be, so water has a higher specific heat than land does. So water is slower to change temperature. So if you live on a coastal region, then you have more, less dramatic changes in weather and less dramatic changes between the seasons than you would if you live in an inland region like where I do. But California, if you live on the west coast of a continent versus the east coast, the weather systems that are moving over have been hanging out over the ocean. So think of that as like another sort of, they've been over the ocean for a while. They're able to kind of calm down, right? Whereas the air that's coming, being blown over the East Coast is coming from the center of the country. So it's getting like continental air. So the air that's being moved over the East Coast is a little wonkier. It's a little, it's more variable. It changes easier. Anyway, so the West Coast of continents on Earth and in the Forgotten Realms is going to have the calmest weather. So Dapper is absolutely right. Sword Coast is gonna get some rainfall, but their weather is going to be a little bit more like California. It's gonna be pretty moderated. It's gonna be a great place to grow some wine. Okay, and so that's basic, big atmospheric circulation stuff. Second thing I want to talk about is how atmospheric circulation is going to affect ocean circulation. So without getting into a whole lot of detail, the effect that we're going to use to understand this, or that I'm using to understand this, is called, oh no, it's Ekman pumping. Nailed it. That's the right word. Okay, it's Ekman pumping. And so basically when you have surface winds like this, you're going to get ocean winds at like a 90-degree angle to them. So I need, you know what we're going to do? We're going to like copy this picture over, and I'm going to make a new slide that is going to do this in, that I'm going to do ocean currents on. So my ocean currents are going to look something like this. Let's put this guy. Okay. Here. Format, rotate. I would like you, there you go. Okay. So So the placement of the continents here is really interesting. But I would expect to get ocean circulation that's going up here and then back down over here. I can't spin it like that, can I? No, oh gosh, that's not what I want you to do. Okay. It's going to go down over here. Great, that's what we're going to see. Or do I have that completely backwards? I have that completely backwards, team. My bad. Goodness gracious. Okay. Sorry. It's going to go up there, down here. And so I would expect it to go roughly up over here. But I don't think we're going to see a big down motion over here because there's so much empty ocean here that I don't think you're going to get a big, like here on Earth, we get strong ocean circulation in like the Atlantic and the Pacific, right? That's like going around kind of in a circle. And because it's bounded by continents on both sides. So I think really the only place you're going to kind of get that bounded flow is here. By the way, this does mean that the Sword Coast is going to have even calmer weather. So the Sword Coast is going to be much more like Western Europe. Western Europe's climate is moderated first by those winds, those westerly winds. And then also, and the actual like predominant effect is the Gulf Stream. So the ocean current very much keeps Western Europe's temperature calm and stable, not changing much. And so they don't have nearly as big swings between seasons. They don't have big swings like one day to the next, like here in Oklahoma, where our weather tries to kill us, which is why it's the correct place to study weather, right? Goodness, I've been in, in 1 week, we've gone from below freezing to like 80 degrees Fahrenheit. It's bonkers, and that kind of thing wouldn't happen in Europe. That kind of thing isn't going to happen on the Sword Coast, and even then a little further inland. And Rebecca, to answer your question, this is not a vector multiplication thing. I'm just trying to show the direction of these are supposed to be ocean currents. I would not subjugate anyone to graphically adding vectors unless it was absolutely necessary, because I think that's the worst thing ever, and I hate graphically adding vectors. Do I know how to do it? Yes, of course I do. Do I still hate it? Yes. Anywho. Okay. So what I want to do now, I think we have kind of a sense. I actually wanted to zoom in on Faerun. So I found a map that's just Faerun. Because this one has the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide has a really, really, really listen, Dapper, I have no problem with trig whatsoever, right? Trigonometry is lovely. Graphically adding vectors is silly, and you will not change my mind on that. Being able to work mathematically with vectors, hooray! But graphically adding them, my goodness, that sounds awful. I don't wanna. Oh, by the way, did you guys see that Batman has a new shelf? So he's happily up there with my blue-footed booby. And Dapper might be the only one in the audience that gets this, but that was a little nameplate I got people to make for me when I was the bull in Sin. And I might have stolen all the office supplies out of my XO's office and relabeled them as property of the bull. And so I have a property of the bull nameplate in commemoration of that. I was very proud of that prank. I stole XO's parking spot too. I got our shop to make a new sign that said bull parking instead of XO parking, and I parked in the XO spot, and that was good. Anyway. Creationist, I'm glad I can trick you a little bit. This is very fun for me. And I think learning should be fun because I was raised on PBS shows in the 90s. Okay. Okay. So what I find really interesting about, there's a lot of things I found interesting about Faerun. Because my goodness, look at all those mountains. I cannot think of how all of those mountains forms. Like, I don't know how those plate tectonics work. I'm going to probably try to not worry about it too much. Two, there's a ton of water here, and water is going to affect our weather a whole lot. And by the way, I'm thinking that Faerun is kind of spanning the mid-latitudes. So this is about the same latitude. Oh, let me pull up a map. I'll share it with you guys here in a second. Map of Earth. And let me share a different file. Share screen, window, this one. Okay. Sorry, I just wanted to pull up a map of, let's actually do Europe. Okay. Images though, because I want Latlons. I can probably read that. Okay, open image in new tab. Here we go. Okay. Boo hiss. Okay, but that's all right. That's all right. So it is probably okay to think of, so if this is kind of Europe, right? So think of this distance as being roughly the same distance for Faerun. That's going to be kind of what we think about. So Spain, you know, the Mediterranean is more mitigated because it has that sea there, but I'll talk about all of that. So, all right, I'm going to switch back to my how do physics work in a magical world? That is a great question, and I have spent an absurd amount of time figuring out the physics of all of the Graviturgy spells from Explorer's Guide to Wildemount, and I don't know what, I just have that sitting in a file, and I don't know what to do with it now. But physics gets a little weird. So share screen. This one. Okay. So again, we're going to think of down here as kind of Spain. And actually, that probably gives us over here where we've got this ocean. And even in here, these regions are going to be very Mediterranean. If you wanted to try to, one of the things I find helpful is to think about, okay, where are these places going to be like on Earth? And that's also going to affect like what food is going to be common there. What are the people going to sort of be like? So because this region here is on this, like, it's on what? The Shining Sea. So this would be analogous to the Mediterranean Sea. So we can think of kind of like Mediterranean, not necessarily cultures, right? But foods, not, so you don't have to do like the exact style of dress, but think about why would you maybe wear a loose fitting toga, right? So and apply that as you move in. The Lake of Steam seems interesting. And by the way, for Graviturgy to work, the wizard has to be able to affect the gravitational constant, at least locally. And I find that very interesting. But I'm talking about climate. Okay. Okay, so things that could also be very common around this coast here, and over here, because we kind of got the Great Sea. So seasons over here are going to have more dramatic changes. So winters will be colder than they are just right over here, and summers will be hotter. But something that you would see in this Shining Sea region, I would expect to see rapid storms. Storms just kind of that come up out of nowhere and disappear almost as quickly. You're going to get some kind of crazy dynamics sometimes when you have water almost completely, like a large body of water, almost completely surrounded by land because of those temperature differences. The water both cools down and heats up slower than the land. So if all of this land is getting warm, but then the ocean would still be cool. So now there's a temperature imbalance, which is going to create a pressure imbalance, which is going to drive winds, but it's going to drive winds all over this place. And the Salmon, that's so kind. I'm super glad you're here and you found the channel. By the way, guys, I'm super close to 2,000 subs. So if any of y'all are somehow not subscribed, I'd appreciate it. Growing slowly but surely, and just gonna keep doing what I'm doing. So, yeah. So yeah, the storms here are gonna be like common, quick, fairly unpredictable. And so that's gonna happen quite a bit. These mountain ranges are throwing me for a loop because they're running more east and west than they are north and south, right? So think about mountain ranges here on planet Earth. There are not many that run east and west. Like the Himalayas are an example, but that's because you have the Indian subcontinent running into the main Eurasian continent. But the Rockies, the Andes, the Appalachia, the Sierra Nevadas, I guess those are all running like north and south. So most of how I think about dynamics because of mountains has to do with those big air masses, right, moving this way and hitting a mountain range. But that's not strictly going to happen because these mountains, these are much smaller ranges and they're sort of oriented the wrong way. So normally it's common, like there's a reason that it's always rainy in, say, Seattle, because you have that air mass coming, those global westerly winds. So you're moving air from over the ocean and then they're just hitting mountains and they have nowhere to go. They have nowhere to go. And so you have all of this air with all this moisture and it just rains, dumps right there onto the windward side of the mountain. The other side of the mountain that's not getting that wind from over the ocean is called the leeward side. But we kind of don't have windward and leeward sides. You do here, but that's very far inland. So if you are like here in these windward little nooks of mountains, you would expect to have a little bit more rain there. But I don't think it's going to be nearly as, so I approve of this forest being placed here. I approve of that. I just don't think it's going to be nearly as much of an effect as you see in Seattle. So I don't think you're going to get that perpetual raininess. Okay, so by the way, with the Sword Coast, so this down here, we're thinking kind of Mediterranean. So very fertile land, long growing seasons, really great place to grow wine. There's a reason that like France and Spain and Italy, their wines are very, very good and very different than California wines. California wines tend to be bigger because the grapes grow faster because they have a shorter growing season, whereas in Europe, because of the additional effect of the Gulf Stream, of that ocean temperature modification, grapes down in like France, they have a really long growth season. So They have more time to take on more complex flavor. So California wines tend to be one really strong, often delicious note, and French or Italian wines tend to have more, many more flavor notes. I sound really bougie right now. I'm sorry, team, but I think that's interesting. So you would even see it in like flowers, right? The flowers would have more complex fragrances, potentially even more complex colors, because flowers in Europe or flowers here along the Sword Coast they have a longer growing season. They take longer to bloom. So if you've ever thought about like tulips in Holland, right? That's like a huge thing there in Dutch culture. So tulips there are able to be really beautiful, partially because of those long growing seasons. So just for like flavor, world building notes, right? Really all along in here, almost food is going to taste better, flour is going to be brighter. So if you have a player character from somewhere completely different, that would be kind of a big deal, right? That not only the difference in weather, but then how that weather affects agriculture, which is one of the main things that weather affects. Cool. Oh, quick note that the Sword Coast is not going to be plagued with hurricanes. It would be really hard for like a tropical storm to make it over here. If I'm going to jump back to my world map, hurricanes would form right along the equator. Oh, shoot. Guys, I am off. This is Faerun. This is the Shining Sea. This is like right at the equator, isn't it? Oof. Okay. Sorry, I've got to I think Mediterranean is still okay, but now I've got to rethink tropical storms. No, tropical storms aren't going to hit this coast. A tropical storm or a hurricane could potentially form around here, but they're going to then follow these surface winds and get blown along this coast. So occasionally a tropical storm that's strong enough can make what's called an extratropical transition. So it would kind of hit here, curve around, and maybe come back and hit up there. But it's not going to be with the same kind of strength that you get when you think of like a hurricane. So good news if you are hurricanes are not a thing you would need to worry about if you were adventuring over in Faerun. Neither are tornadoes. Tornadoes aren't going to be a thing you need to worry about. Hail is going to be hard to make. So big old thunderstorms. Yeah, Dapper, absolutely. Sword Coast, I think, is prime real estate. I kind of want to move there. But okay. So because the temperature and the weather along the Sword Coast is going to be moderated by both the ocean and the air currents, it's going to be really, really, really hard to get severe weather like what I'm used to. Wizard NATOs. So that's actually a really good point, Dapper. I know you're making a joke, but what could be fun if you're playing a storm cleric or oh goodness, there's a barbarian path that storms. I was just looking at it and I forget the exact path. Storm Herald, Path of the Storm Herald. Or anybody that's like I know there's some homebrew like storm druids. So if you're playing a character that like messes with that, or maybe like your villains are doing stuff with the weather, if you see a crazy thunderstorm or a tornado or hail, you can almost guarantee in this setting that that's a magical effect, which I think is very cool, right? And something that you could definitely, a skilled DM could definitely use for tone. So I think that's actually a cool world building setting kind of note that you can use there. Down here, because this is in the tropics, it would be common for there to be like an hour of rain every day at the same time, and it just shows up, rains really hard, and then goes away. Tropical weather is odd. It tends to do things like that. I'm trying to think if you would get a monsoon season. I think monsoon seasons, you need to be, places with strong monsoons need to be in the tropics. And there are specific terrain effects so that make a monsoon much worse. So there's like the West African monsoon, obviously the Indian and East Asian monsoon, and a big effect of why the Indian monsoon is such a big deal, excuse me, is because of the Himalayas and the Tibetan Plateau. That terrain is really important for the strength of the monsoon. And I'm looking at this map and I don't see those same like big terrain difference features. So I don't think you would have particularly strong, like, I don't think monsoons are going to be a thing in Faerun, but especially over here, their weather is going to be, they're going to have less, 4 seasons, spring, summer, winter, and fall. They're much more, especially over here, going to have a rainy season and a dry season. And as we get a little further north, so let's think about what's going on up here. By the way, if you guys have any questions, just let me know. I'm just kind of looking at this and giving my initial thoughts. I tried to not look at this map closely before I started the stream because I wanted this to be sort of off the cuff. By the way, up here, okay, yeah, there's Icewind Dale and the Spine of the World. Okay, so up here, think like Norway, and then you're getting into like actual Arctic stuff. Past that, so there is Norway, or something that would be akin to Norwegian weather. But I am kind of interested in what is going on around the Sea of Fallen Stars. I'm intrigued by this because this looks like it. And if anybody in the comment in chat knows, is the Sea of Fallen Stars salt water? Because it looks like it could be fresh water to me, which would be super interesting. So big old lakes like the Great Lakes. But this is more one big connected region. So I sort of wonder. And now this is also far enough north that one of the cool things we could see here are going to be. Okay, Sea of Fallen Stars has no outlet besides evaporation, and it is salty. Okay, so this would be more, I guess, like the Black Sea or something like that. I am curious about the plate tectonics of Faerun, but I am not brave enough to tackle that because this seems. I'll just accept that this is what the world looks like and deal with the fallout, right? Okay. So let's think about this. Okay. I'm trying to think if you're going to be able to get like really strong thunderstorms are going to be hard to get here. One of the reasons that we get those in North America, in the Great Plains, and in South America too, is because of air interacting with North America, the Rocky Mountains. So it's air that's sort of forced up and over the Rocky Mountains, so that when it gets over the top and comes back down, then we have this cold, dry air mass. And then we have warm, moist air coming up from the Gulf of Mexico. But because we have this big, and when those two things, when cold, dry air and warm, moist air smash together, interesting weather occurs. But because Faerun has this big sea, even though we have all these mountains, you know, my cold, dry air that would say come up and over the mountains here are interacting not with warm, moist air, but with sort of this colder, moist air. Because these mountain regions aren't sort of connected and forming this coherent geography, because apparently the gods just keep making more mountains, which, you know, fair, that's a thing they can do. Uh, then I don't think you're going to get those sort of dramatic things. So again, calmer weather than we see, at least here in my neck of the woods. I would expect snow to be a really big deal here and here, because I think lake effect snow is going to be very important. Lake effect snow happens when, so you have cold air and it moves over a body of water. The water is now actually warmer than the air above it because of those differences in heat capacity. So cold, dry air moves over the body of water and it's over relatively warm, moist surface. So this cold, dry air gobbles up a whole bunch of moisture from the lake and then it keeps moving. And when it gets back over land, say like here, all along here, all along here, because remember we have those global westerly winds moving our air masses this way. Now it's back over cold land. And so all that moisture it just picked up is going to almost immediately fall as snow. So that's lake effect snow. And so I think that's going to be a big deal around here. You do tend to see that happen when temperature suddenly drops. So you need like a big old cold front to move in. Yeah. What is going on here? Is this this looks like a desert. That seems like a strange place for a desert. But I think I'm gonna just let that be and assume that that was magic. So let's zoom back out of just Faerun for a second. Let's pop back over here. And let's kind of think through. It's like I am kind of interested in how the cursed Icewind Dale, you know, perma winter is affecting the weather downstream. So I'm actually going to make a new blank slide and copy just my basic map over. And let's think about that. Okay. So we have this permanent cold air mass here because this is being magically forced to be cold. Okay. So let's think about that for a second. Let me do a text box, please. I want, oh no. Okay. There we go. Okay. Cold. And it's going to be, well, let's not think about dry. Let's just think about it's cold. So let me make that text so big, much bigger, and bold. There we go. So I've got cold air there. It should probably be blue, right? Like cold air is blue. And then comparatively below that, it's like warm. So we'll do H for hot. Let me kill that. This here. Okay. And we'll make you red for hot. Whoa. Set H. There we go. Okay. So if I have, yeah, I don't know, or maybe like just cursed. I'm not sure about, I'm not sure if you're thinking of something else. I know less about the worlds of D&D than I wish I did. Okay. So very simply, cold, hot. And let's not forget that we have our westerly winds. So think of this as the jet stream. So we're also going to have this in here. Okay. We have winds that are going like that. Okay. When I have a disparity in temperature, that's also going to cause a disparity in pressure. I'm actually going to, and now that I think about it, I think I'm actually going to spell out cold. Hot. Because I want to do high and low pressure. So warm air rises, cold air sinks. So we would get a low pressure system here and a high pressure system here. So we would see, we would start to see, oh goodness. Yeah, we're going to try to have movement of from here to here. That, because we're always going to move from high pressure to low, right? So we're going to try to move that warm air towards the cold from the high pressure to the low pressure. I want this arrow to go like this. And that's fine. And let's make it a different color. How about green? Okay. But this, I'm intentionally making this arrow smaller because the winds being driven by this constant temperature difference and that constant pressure difference will not be as strong as the winds that are caused by the planet's rotation. So if normally this guy is going like this, right? Let's make this really long. Now I have this other wind that's going to start to force it up. I wish this had a proper draw feature. What this is going to do is perturb the jet stream. So we'll start to get it to bend like a sine wave. I literally don't know how to do that in my very limited capacity here. So we'll start to get a bend in this sine wave, and we might end up with a semi-permanent ridge right here. So I might be able to draw that. So let me do this. Okay. Great. All right. So that pink arrow is going to get deformed. Good God, this is going to fail horribly. Okay. I'm going to Microsoft Paint. I'm going to Paint, guys. I'm going to find a Paint analog on the internet. All right, bear with me while I look for a thing. How? I'm not surprised. CESM is terrible. I've just now been able to run a test case. And I still have to be able to do my own experiment. It's complicated. I'm glad it's open source, but it is hard to use. Also, how is everybody's weeks while I'm looking for a way to draw a weather map for you? Anyway, also, hello, Mark. Welcome. Glad your week is going okay, Dapper. I have not been practicing this drawing like the Navy taught me. That's a rule the Navy teaches you when you are learning how to draw, when you're learning how to teach, because they want to make sure that you don't accidentally draw a dick on the board or something that could be mistaken. And I caught myself a couple times. Okay. Bam. Nobody should hate on Microsoft Paint, just as a note. Microsoft Paint was a great tool. And I'm always sad that I can't use it because I have a Mac. But Macs don't have the equivalent. Anywho. So, okay. Pencil, right? We had this guy going this way, winds, and then we're like, bam, we end up with low pressure over here, but high pressure over here, which caused so I don't know. I know the training that they gave me for like teaching, I think that's public. But I don't know if the specifically like always draw the diagram before you put it on the board, because sailors will always make it gross. I don't know if that's public. Okay, so what's going to happen is this is going to bend. We're going to see this guy bend. So instead of straight like that, it'll look like this, right? With the wind traveling like this. And this whole shape is going to be about the size of Faerun. Now, here's what's interesting, because we just made some vorticity when we did this. What is vorticity, you ask? Vorticity is one of the ways that you measure how much air is spinning. I am going to be so happy if my notes are right here. They are right here, guys. Bam. These are my notes from Atmospheric Fundamentals. Epsilon is greater than. Am I insane? I am insane. Goodness gracious, guys. I did this completely wrong. Yeah, thank you, Epsilon. Because cold air is associated with the high pressure that's sinking. So what in the world am I doing? I need to undo. Can I Control Z? Yep. Okay. Bam. Okay. So cold air is our high pressure up here. Low pressure here. And we're going to flow from high to low. Yep. That was warm, and it's going to go up. That's cold. It's going to go down. It's going to go away. And so it's going to circulate like that. Yes. Okay. So there we go. It's going to go like that. This is another reason why I normally write everything down before I draw it live, because however my brain works, I flip things like this all the time. I flip very simple things that I know, and yet here we are. Okay. Okay, but same principle. So we're going to get like a trough here and then a ridge upstream, because it's got to, go back somewhere. All right. So why is this important, you ask? Great question. So troughs like this. So by the way, this is a trough. This is a ridge. Troughs, and specifically like this point in a trough, tend to be associated with storms. So what happens for the weather savvy in the audience, this has the makings of a mid-latitude cyclone. But what happens is when we have this trough here, we have a point of maximum vorticity here, so maximum spinniness. what happens is this maximum spinniness, it's going to sort of move with these winds. So this moves up here like this. That's point of maximum vorticity. It shifts this way. We get this local low pressure system here. So low pressure here. And we're going to get winds that kind of wrap around. So what we'll get is we get a cold front here. And we get a warm front here. And you get an occluded front behind it, like this. So, and then my winds, what's another color? Let's do green again. So I'll have winds here kind of going like this, winds here going like this. Oh, shoot, I drew my warm front wrong. Boop, 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 boop. It curved the other way. It's gonna curve kind of like that. There's my warm front. Okay. Okay, so that goes like this. This goes like this. So, sorry, all of this, all of this to say, I'm not quite sure what's happening in chat. I think I'm just gonna ignore that. If something's wrong, let me know, team. Okay, so we're gonna get these winds that start to circulate, and we're gonna tend to get storms along edges of cold fronts. So right along here, oh, that's yellow. That's a terrible color. Let's try this. Right along here, we would expect to see sort of some storminess. But what I find interesting is that kind of setup, this would be called a synoptic scale setup, which sort of helps you understand how the weather is going to generally behave for the next several days. This synoptic scale setup is going to be semi-permanent because Icewind Dale is magically made to have a constant, really low temperature. So let me pull back up Faerun. Okay. Sorry, checking on chat. Window, Faerun. Okay, so that setup here, where instead of this nice line, it's going to curve, right, come down. I have that backwards, and I'm a little embarrassed by it. Okay, so it's going to come down and then curve up. So we're going to almost see semi-permanent storm systems here. And I think we're going to go ahead and assume that, let's see. So the only way you can have like an isolated space that's permanently cold, right, is going to be by magic. That takes a lot of energy to keep it that way. That's you know, the Frost Maiden has to expend a lot of her power to keep Icewind Dale trapped, and I think that makes sense. So I think you're having the cold sort of trying to leach out, because cold, it's not just going to stay like that, right? That's not, there's a sharp temperature gradient. So another thing you might see along the border of Icewind Dale, if it is just a sharp magical barrier, you might actually see a lot of storms along the edge of Icewind Dale, because you just have this cold, stationary air that anything else by comparison is warm, and so is going to rise up over it. Yeah, man, Isaiah 40:22, dude, let's not do flat Earth stuff here. That's not, we're here to talk about climate in a fantasy world and learn stuff about weather. That's what we're here for. It's fun. It's fun. Anyway, so yeah, so what I was saying is that right here around Icewind Dale, any air that comes near it, by comparison, is warm and moist. So warm, moist air, when it hits cold, dry air, the cold, dry air sinks, the warm, moist air rises. And when you have rapidly rising air, that is a spectacular way to make a cloud and make a storm system. So I actually think, yeah, that's going to be completely surrounded by storms. So that's very cool. And Icewind Dale would be affecting the rest of Faerun by generally making it stormier. So if you're running an Icewind Dale campaign or want to include Icewind Dale, if your party isn't already up there or doesn't have a reason to go there, a good plot hook could be that their weather is changing. Their weather, it's getting stormier. If you were a farmer, that would be bad news, right? Because that's going to really start to mess with your crops. Yeah, that's cool. That's kind of fun to think about. Oh my goodness. Okay. Dapper, have I made you a mod? If I haven't, why have I not done that? All right, standby team. I want to do a thing. Let's see. What else is going on? Oh, my dog Shep, if you guys know my sweet old man Australian Shepherd, who is a giant. He has to go back on his diet because he managed to gain weight, which, you know, is cool. There you go. So Shep is a little upset. He has to go back on his diet. But otherwise, they both checked out great at the vet. I was really happy about that. Because I was really happy about that. Sorry, we adopted these dogs, Shep and Chester, about a year ago. And when we got them, they were both heartworm positive. And so they're both like completely free of heartworms now and are good and healthy. And none of them are having any lasting health effects, except that Shep would like to eat his body weight at every meal. Bless his heart. So yeah. So he's back on a diet. He's not very happy with me, but he is a very sweet boy. And I am tomorrow going to sew him a new dog bed because he's such a big dog that the dog beds at Petco didn't fit him. And the reason he doesn't currently have a dog bed is because the last time we left the house and left the very good boys home alone without us, Chester panicked and tore up both of their beds. So Shep has been giving Chester the side eye quite a bit about wanting his bed back. Okay, so hopefully there was fabric on sale at Michael's yesterday, so I'm gonna sew my dog a dog bed. That seems reasonable. I definitely don't want to spoil them at all. It's definitely not what I'm here for. Okay. By the way, Dapper, you should have mod now. But I think other mod handled it. So goodness gracious. Okay. Icewind Dale. We talked about that. We talked about how it would be affecting it. Ooh. Also, you could really play with it because where you're going to get that big trough, it's going to be right around here, that semi-permanent trough. So where you would have those persistent storms, you could place them right here on this side of that inland sea. And so if we have that trough that dips down to here, the Sea of Shining Stars, remember I said about lake effect snow, so you could dial that effect up really, really intensely. Because some of that cold air that would be moving south, that's straight from Icewind Dale. Thanks, Rebecca. If he comes back and is being obnoxious, please just kick him from the stream. I don't really want to deal with that. because I'm so good at keeping my attention on one thing that, you know, clearly I could just handle that. Anywho, so you have this like cold air protruding down here from Icewind Dale. You get this big trough, you get a big storm system that's just always here. And the fallout from that could very reasonably be like just absurd amounts of snow, feet and feet and feet of snow here from that lake effect snow. So I think that could be super cool. Okay, team, do you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns for me? I'd be happy to answer them. Those are sort of, that's like my big overview, quick take. I guess we didn't talk about the East Coast. It's gonna be similar to East Coast US, honestly. But yeah. Okay, well, if you have questions, I'm keeping an eye on chat. Pop them in. I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, let's see. There's going to be another Weather 101 video up tomorrow. It is on the ideal gas law. So that's up tomorrow. And I think, and then there'll be another one up on Sunday. Okay. Moonshae Isles and what's Faye gonna be like? So I'm gonna start with those Moonshae Isles. Let me finish with my schedule really fast. So there'll be a new Weather 101 video on Thursday and then another one on Sunday. And Monday should be session 3 of Guns, Magic, and Steel, which I am super excited about. Everybody is trapped in a mine surrounded by dinosaurs. Okay. So let's take a look at the Red Wizards rock out to storm so much. Okay, Moonshae Isles. Let me start there. Pop back here. I think, okay. The Moonshae Isles, those are... Sorry, team, are the Moonshae Isles in Faerun? I am looking. The Moonshae Isles. Oh, okay. There we go. These guys. Okay, Dusty and Arid. Dusty and Arid. I wouldn't expect them to be Dusty and Arid. Or would I? Hold on. Let's take a look. Can we justify that? So doot, this one. Yeah, I wouldn't expect them to be Dusty and Arid. That doesn't mean that they aren't, right? But what would, so like, I could justify these guys, the nil something Isles. Sorry, it's kind of getting out of focus. I can't quite read it. Oh, I thought Faye was Dusty and Arid. Sorry. Okay. So the Moonshae Isles. Okay. Those islands are pretty interesting and they've got some interesting topography. So these are not like tropical islands. These are going to be a little further north. So maybe more England-y. Oh, Mark, you're good. You're good. I think I figured out what's going on. Okay. So think kind of England-y with these guys. The significant topography here is interesting. So things I would expect, you were like, especially with this guy and this guy, you're going to have a rainy side. So it's going to rain a lot more here than it is here. Kind of depends on how wide those are. I'm having a little trouble telling that. I think these guys, I would say they're going to be pretty rainy and dreary. Because you're going to be getting a lot of that, like, kind of like Seattle-y, because you're getting a lot of that air moving off the ocean. There's enough topography for it to kind of run into, and it's far enough north that I'm thinking kind of rainy and dreary, which I don't know, that also sort of fits the vibe for me of like the Moonshale Islands. Maybe a little bit warmer than we would think of for like England, but kind of that dreary feel is what I would say. Okay, and then Thay. Where is Thay? Oh, Thay over here. Okay. Oh gosh, that's such a bad resolution. Okay. So Thay definitely looks like a desert region. I don't have a good reason why it's a desert. It kind of doesn't fall on where I would expect deserts globally to be. Um, but certainly that doesn't mean that it can't be a desert. Okay. So what will be going on here? Definitely could be getting some storms. You're going to have some of that effect of this mountain range. Normally being on, if it's like a savanna, yeah. I could definitely jive with a savanna. That's probably a good feel because you have all of this huge body of water here. It's going to hard for this to be super arid, or like a proper desert. So I kind of like that savanna idea there, Dapper. So think like dry grasses, pretty hospitable to life though, to like big wildlife. So maybe like probably big expansive grasslands. You wouldn't expect a lot of trees. You would have more shrubbery. And it does seem to have a good water source. So it's got a big lake there. A difference between this and like if you're thinking like African savanna is close enough to the equator that it tends to have more rainy and dry seasons versus 4 proper seasons. And yeah, lions and red wizards, I like it. So you will have more like proper seasons, but it's not going to be so basically you just won't have a rainy season because this isn't going to be marked by like changes in the foliage, because that's not going to be the types of things that we're thinking are going to grow there. But if you're looking for permission to drop a bunch of lions on your party if they're going into Thay, like I give you permission. Lions sound great. It also might get a little cold, especially up here. I'm trying to understand the topography of what's drawn. It looks like there's like big steps. So I think we've got some decent elevation up here, especially this lake. Yeah, that lake, I'm assuming, is higher elevations of these rivers pour down and drain into these other guys. That's true. And I mean, now aren't there like more, I'm pretty sure there's more lions in Texas. What was that statistic? That there's more lions in Texas than there are like in the wild or something. No, that was tigers. That's what it was. There's more tigers in Texas than there are in the wild, which surprises me exactly 0. I'm also thinking that there's some magic going on there to keep that region arid. And because especially like there is not a good reason to have desert on the west side of a mountain range, but it to be lush and green on the east side. I'm struggling with that a little bit. And that kind of inland arid region, there's some magic going on there, I think. But that's okay. We all need a little magic in their life. So, okay, team, I think I'm going to wrap up Faerun. If you guys like this, please leave me a comment and share it around. This is sort of a new type of video I'm trying. Normally on my Wednesday live streams, I'm doing like debunk stuff, like a live response to some like pseudoscience or whatever. But this just seems like a fun thing to do today. And so yeah, please, help me out and let me know if you liked it, right? So like, comment, all that fun stuff. And before I sign off, I'll answer Dapper's question. The Schult Peninsula. So let's do one more. I'm glad that you guys watching are liking this. This is very fun for me. Okay, where is that? Bam. You scheduled your grocery store trip around this? Excellent. Hey, Dapper, is the peninsula you're interested in Faerun, or is it broader? I don't see it. Where'd you go? Do. Thank you so much, Mark. This is really fun for me. It's, my everything I like. All right, Dabber, I can't find. Oh, it's south. Okay. Oh, okay. South. No. I don't see it though. Sorry, I'm looking. Do I need to zoom out some more? So there's that. Is it this guy? This guy. Okay. Okay. Let's think about him, shall we? South. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So the interesting dynamics we've got going on here is this sea jutting in, right? That's going to complicate it. It's not this. Okay, I had it the first time. It's this guy. The thing that the giant black arrow is pointing to, and I'm going to take my hands off. Yeah, sorry, there is a lag with StreamYards. Perfect. Giant black arrow. Okay. So, yeah, sorry, we kind of did that at the very beginning. That is going to be very Mediterranean. So, think like France and Spain jutting out into the ocean there. So this guy. Yeah. Let's see. We have a little warmer than France and yeah, you're right. It's on the equator, so it is going to be warmer. But it's affected by those like ocean currents, so it keeps it more moderated. So I'm pretty comfortable still hotter and wetter than Spain. So, okay, you think that, however, well, let me think. Because we have competing effects. We have its latitude competing with the ocean current. And the ocean current here in Faerun is going to behave differently than the ocean current on Earth because our ocean currents are pretty like subjugated to their own hemispheres. But that's like the coastlines here are so different. And the continents, like one continent, Faerun spreads across like north and south. So let me think. So I think you're right. I think it would be warmer than like France, Spain, and Portugal. The however comma there is not as warm as what you're thinking because that ocean current should still, wait, no, that's going to be different. because my ocean currents, by the time it comes down, it will have warmed up a lot. So it's not nearly as moderated. So that is going to be a lot warmer and wetter. Okay. So what would be a good analogy? Let me think. What's going to be a good... I don't think there's going to be a good spot on like Africa that's like the right analogy. What about... Jungle would be a great description. Yeah, jungle is going to be great. I actually might go so far as to say like rainforest. So I'm starting to think more like, yeah, exactly. Northern Amazon basin. I was starting to think of like rainforest in like Mexico. We're just on the same wavelength here, Dapper. I love it. Yeah, I think that's a good description. Yeah. So Amazon, I think, is a good analogy for that. Okay. Well, guys, it's just about 8:30. I have had so much fun. I hope you all have had so much fun. And if I'm going to do, I'll probably do like a pseudoscience video for my live stream next week. But if I'm going to do another, I've already got a couple other fantasy settings set out to do that I would like to, if people would find it interesting. So have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday, and I will see you guys live. I'll see you guys next week. Okay, bye team.